Before we begin, a short disclaimer to acknowledge that I have an existing professional relationship with many of the men and women mentioned throughout this video, and most importantly, the researcher whose work is the primary focus. This video aims to present a factual summary of this work to date, as well as provide a subjective opinion of what is an exciting area of games and AI research. These efforts are, much like all AI and games videos, intended to disseminate to the wider world and encourage wider discussion of these issues. The fact that I know these men and women is the result of my involvement within this community over the last 10 years. This video is neither driven by my desire to promote these individuals specifically, nor is it a paid promotion of this work. The idea of even having the budget for such activities is right now making a whole bunch of academics watching this video chuckle to themselves. Any and all nice things I do say have been noted and recorded for future reference, and will be employed largely for the purposes of reclaiming free alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages at future game developer and researcher events. Alright, you still on board? Good. On with the show! Hi, I'm Tommy Thompson, and this is AI in Games, a series on research and applications of artificial intelligence in video games. Throughout this series, we've looked at a variety of interesting AI applications from both the games industry as well as games academia. How to utilise standard industry technologies alongside clever video game design to create interesting non-player characters, how to adopt analytics to learn more about the players who play our games, even AI systems that take control of a game or build parts of the game for us. All of these ideas and systems are tightly scoped within existing video game design, a creator's vision that brings these elements together into a cohesive product. This often results in games crafted around a specific idea or concept that a designer aims for players to experience. This ranges from games such as the quirky Fable series by Peter Molyneux, the aggressive and impactful Gears of War by Cliff Bleszinski, but also the serious yet absurd Metal Gear Solid series by Hideo Kojima, and the twisted, horrific, yet poignant tales of Dark Souls and Bloodborne by Hidetaka Miyazaki. But what if we replaced these designers with an artificially intelligent system? What if an AI became the game designer? In more recent years, we've seen a resurgence of AI techniques for the purposes of procedural content generation. But even in this instance, it does not replace the designer, it merely acts as their conduit in specific aspects of the game's construction. BCG is useful for building specific elements of a given game. The weapons of Borderlands, the caves of Spelunky, the planets of No Man's Sky. These systems, while impressive, are left in charge of a specific content creation problem within a game that is already expressly defined. So in this video, we're taking a look at what can happen if we let the AI become the creator, to allow a system to explore a creative space with respect to a particular idea or concept without human intervention or oversight. What is then fascinating to observe is not only the games it creates, but whether we as humans can respect not just the final output as a form of artistic expression, but also recognise the program as its creator. Let's take a look at Angelina, an artificial intelligence system that creates its own video games. In order to understand what Angelina does, we need to understand the philosophies that drive it and how it's ultimately unique from other AI systems explored within AI in games. So without further ado, let's take our first steps into the world of computational creativity. Computational creativity is a long-established field of study that blends the theoretical fields of cognitive psychology and philosophy with the algorithm and data-driven realities of artificial intelligence. While AI often finds ways to automate intelligent decision-making, the ideal of thinking like a human or acting like a human has largely been abolished from contemporary literature. However, in computational creativity, the aspiration is for an AI to not only be a creator of art, but that it does so in a manner that simulates or replicates human creative processes, to have intentionality in its creative pursuits. By doing so, we hope to learn more about artistic expression and better understand the process, given that all of us have some form of creative drive. This is what separates the likes of procedural content generation from computational creativity. While many of the techniques can and do overlap, it's the overall approach taken that matters. PCG is applied to make specific things within a defined set of parameters in an effort to construct assets for a given project. Computational creativity takes that same template, but often the parameters are a lot more relaxed. So when making a video game, trying to even get a grasp of the design process can be rather challenging, as we'll see in a minute. Computational creativity has been explored in a myriad of artistic fields, with the likes of autonomous digital painters, musicians, Twitter celebrities, comedians, and of course, video game creators. The music playing in this video right now is from an AI artist, which is kinda neat. In addition, there are research events such as the International Conference on Computational Creativity, or ICCC, in which researchers from across the world come to discuss their ideas and showcase their creative systems. So with that in mind, how do you even start building a computationally creative video game designer? A novel game-evolving lab rat I named Angelina, or Angelina for short, is a long-running research project developed by video game researcher and developer Michael Cook. Cook is no stranger to both games academia and the larger video game community. While his career in games has been driven by his journey to build Angelina for his PhD, he is also known for his work as an independent video game developer, including his upcoming platforming/hacking game Rogue Process. However, he's arguably more widely known for founding the Procedural Content Generation Jam, or PROCJAM, in 2014, an annual game jam event complete with an online magazine, tutorials and talks co-organised by Game Jam YouTuber Jupiter Hadley. Angelina has been in development for several years, to the point that it has gone through several versions that challenge specific areas of the game creation process. At the time of this video, version 6 of Angelina is ready to be released into the wild, and is approaching aspects of game design and the game creation process in a more mature and established context than when it first started out. Angelina started out as Cook struggled to find solid ground for his PhD topic in late 2010. While in discussion with his supervisor, researcher Simon Colton, whose own work includes the computationally creative artist The Painting Fool, a throwaway comment was made of whether a computationally creative system could be designed to build video games. At the time, there was little work in this area, even in procedural content generation research, with only a tangential side project by Julian Tegelius, a prevalent figure in the game AI research community. Cook took to this with great enthusiasm and hacked out what became the first Angelina system, making simple 2D games involving mazes and different coloured circles. As Cook's own proficiency as a game developer has grown, so too has Angelina's, as it gradually has addressed more challenging parts of the creative process. As we'll see in a second, Angelina has taken to a variety of challenges, including finding inspiration from the internet as well as participating in game jams. But first, let's take a peek at how Angelina goes about making games. Angelina is reliant upon a method of learning known as evolutionary computation. It's a specific branch of machine learning algorithms where we try to learn from prior experience in order to improve the solutions to problems. This is achieved by effectively breeding solutions to a problem as a population and letting offspring of good solutions mutate in a model akin to Darwinian evolution. More specifically, Angelina is reliant on a strand of this theory known as cooperative coevolution. Coevolution is often used to allow for solutions to learn as they are assessed relative to each other, but this is often done in confrontational contexts, such as my own research on neural net-driven tanks that learn to fight by killing each other, which is pretty dark. Cooperative coevolution is aimed more at having a set of distinct species within the ecosystem and a variety of objectives we want the system to hit. The species vary in each instance of Angelina, but typically focus on the likes of level design, the rules of play, win-loss conditions, and enemy NPC design. The more distinct aspects it has to create, the bigger the design problem for Angelina to tackle. Effectively, one solution or game design is a collection of solutions from each of these species put together, given they represent all the facets needed for the back engine to then construct the game. Much like The Painting Fool before it, as Angelina slowly grew in its game designing capabilities, tools were provided to allow for the system to outright state why it makes certain design decisions. This ranges not only from mechanics, but as we'll see shortly, the selection of specific art assets, some of which procured directly from the internet. Angelina is focused entirely on the design of the game rather than the more granular level of mechanic implementation, to the point that each version of the system is built to have template implementation of mechanics and rules for the game to adopt, and is often using established third-party libraries and engines such that games can be put together and distributed easily for humans to play. As such, Angelina doesn't program the mechanics itself, given this is actually a really hard problem and would detract from the designer focus attributed to the system. When I asked why, Cook explained that he's more interested in exploring how people react to the design decisions of Angelina than focusing on minute aspects of implementation. This isn't to say he hasn't explored this, with a short side project, Mechanic Minor, that focused on how to create and construct mechanics for games. This led to an understanding of the challenges behind mechanic design that he wasn't ready to tackle yet. Having an AI build a jump mechanic is tough, but then getting it to understand what type of jump it has made and how best to use said jump in its level design can be quite challenging. The first iteration of Angelina focused on the construction of 2D tile maze levels, including a variety of mazes and different coloured circles. The games as shown now were largely fixed in terms of the overarching components and the map structure. As such, it focused on the construction of rules for each game to adhere to, allowing for different constraints on how players can win or lose the game. Two playable examples on the Angelina website, Revenge and After Squad, look markedly similar on first pass, but actually handle quite differently in terms of their core gameplay logic. As Angelina moved towards version 2 in the latter half of 2011, the idea moved away from looking specifically at rules of the game, but how to place items or provide abilities to embellish an existing game. This took shape in the form of simple Metroidvania-style games, a genre of games inspired by the core design principles of series such as Metroid and Castlevania. These Metroidvania games introduce players to large open maps to explore, but in order for them to explore it exhaustively, they need to find specific items or abilities in order to visit areas previously gated off from them. This resulted in games such as Space Station Invaders, where the player has large open maps to explore and items to collect, with the system focusing on map design, balancing the item placement and accessibility of the world alongside core game rules. Having worked towards growing its game-making capabilities, Angelina 3 goes off on an interesting tangent, questioning whether it can make games while being inspired by current events. This is an area that Cook's supervisor Colton had previously explored with The Painting Fool, in that the manner in which the artist expresses itself is driven in part by its mood, a sentiment reached by reading articles on the internet. As such, 2012's Angelina Mark III is arguably the system's controversial phase, in that it takes the core mechanics of Angelina 2 but then embellishes themes from current events in order to establish an aesthetic. This is achieved by scraping news articles from the British publication The Guardian and then inferring games from that. Guardian articles are pulled down to record topics, persons of interest, themes, and even the opinions of people involved. The latter was achieved by scraping the opinions of that person on Twitter. This was hardly a foolproof notion, given that controversial characters in the media at that time, such as Rupert Murdoch, the owner of Fox News, Sky TV and News Corporation, was considered responsible by the system, itself a reflection of the repeated use of the word in conjunction with Murdoch and his ownership of the News of the World during the phone hacking scandal that was prevalent in British media at that time. The word was meant in associating blame, but Angelina read it as a positive attribute of Murdoch's character. While this is yet to be fully explored, Cook himself admits there's potential in assessing the types of games that could arise around the same topic should Angelina try reading different news outlets, given that the tone and language of a publication can vary when they adopt a left-wing or right-wing political stance. In addition, Angelina 3 pulls down art assets based on the key topics and themes it's exploring, often placing items of relevance in the background to remind you of the importance of the original topic as part of the construction of that aesthetic. This resulted in games such as The Conservation of Emily and Sex, Lies and Rape, where basic platforming games carry a serious thematical element. The former driven by a story on conservation of rainforests, while the latter came from a more sinister story of the Rochdale gang in Greater Manchester who were prosecuted for sexually exploiting young girls. This intentionality led to a tangential project to Angelina 3 entitled A Rogue Dream, that sought to explore how this approach can be expanded upon for creating roguelike style games. However, in this case, it pulled data by use of Google milking, a process of typing key phrases into Google and pulling down the top autocomplete responses. This in turn results in a video game designer whose understanding of the world is driven by our own naive explorations of it through use of a search engine. This, however, was not expanded upon further once the dangers of this approach became readily apparent. Google searches and the internet at large are in many respects a reflection of our own prejudices and biases, but also the painful truths of humanity's existence on Earth. As such, it became far too easy for the system to yield undesirable or controversial topics for games when dealing with topics such as religion and cultural identity, after running but a handful of Google searches. The sex, lies and rape game is but an indication of the types of things that can arise in such systems without safeguards, and is still relatively tame, in contrast to something that Rogue Dream could create, given that more of the functionality of the game is coming from this external input. While the system works, as shown in the variety of games shown now, it was effectively shelved given it would require intense scrutiny of the aesthetic decisions it makes, and curation of the games it constructs. Angelina versions 4 and 5 are essentially an extension of Angelina 3, but applied to larger 3D games using the Unity game engine. However, it is what largely propelled the system to infamy thanks to its participation in game jams. As Cook himself grew in his ability to write games, he entered game jams and as such felt that Angelina should seek to participate as a self-respecting indie developer. This led to Angelina participating in the 28th Ludum Dare game jam in 2013, during which Michael submitted 2 games developed by Angelina 4 to be considered for judging under the theme of "You Only Get One." The first, entitled Stretch Bouquet Point, was submitted by Cook anonymously, using an annotated version of Angelina's own output commentary on the game that it generated, but under the pretense that he developed it himself as an aspiring developer. In this instance, he tweaked the output to imply that it was his own work and that he was trying his hand at video game design. However, the second game, To That Sect, was submitted with Angelina expressly stated as the author of the work, such that reviewers were aware in advance it was created by a computationally creative system. The subsequent ranking and feedback could not be more disparate, with To That Sect being treated much more seriously as a piece of game development, ranking higher than Stretch Bouquet Point. Point received far from a positive response, ranging from constructive criticism to being outright slated. Meanwhile, feedback and response towards To That Sect exploded, with media coverage on the likes of both Develop and Polygon. This presents an interesting experiment in how we as humans critique both the artistic merits of a given creative output, but also how we treat the creator. It's readily apparent from reading the reviews that players could infer elements of artistic expression in parts of To That Sect, while Stretch Bouquet Point was largely slated for lacking in polish or a clear and cohesive game loop. Yet they are in many respects a similar game at a surface level, only to then diversify in areas of aesthetic and minor rule changes. But hey, one was made by an AI game designer. So suddenly that negativity, that edge is removed from the discourse, because now it's an interesting product of an AI process. Angelina continued on to develop more games and even participated in subsequent Ludum Dare game jams, although at this point the gig was up. As such, it was outright declared that it was the AI system building the game. This continued to identify a fundamental issue with how players treated both the system and its creative outputs. That players would believe the system to be innovative in some capacity, rather than marvel at the games themselves. The games in many respects get a free pass despite being not very good, a point that Cook himself readily admits, and as such raises questions of how reliably you can assess the output of a computationally creative system through such human interaction, given if you keep the creator secret or otherwise, it proves to be somewhat unreliable. At the time of this video, Angelina 6 is close to launch, and Cook has some ambitious plans that will fundamentally change not just how Angelina performs as a game designer and developer, but how it performs as an artist. Once again, this system seeks to challenge the expectations of how AI systems create content and the manner in which we interface with it, both as a piece of software, but also as an auteur. While it's clear it still has much to learn, the growth in Angelina's creative aspirations, as well as the quality of games created, is pretty substantial for a project that is not only less than 10 years old, but also built by a single developer. The future is looking really exciting, and you can bet there will be plenty more games by Angelina to enjoy in the coming years, and perhaps a future video exploring the system's continued growth and development. If you're interested in playing some of the games mentioned in this video, be sure to head to gamesbyangelina.org, where you can find blog updates by Michael Cook, as well as a collection of the games Angelina has made to try out. You can also find links to Stretch Bouquet Point and To That Sect over on the Ludum Dare 28 pages. As Cook himself will often admit, many of the games created range from being rough around the edges to just outright ridiculous, but they're the product of an artist who made those decisions. It's up to us as people to be able to respect the creative outputs of Angelina as an artist in its own right. It's still going through tremendous growth, and while it might not be winning game jams or becoming an indie darling anytime soon, the games it is creating are nonetheless interesting explorations of game design and construction with every subsequent release. Despite all this, the system is intrinsically linked to Cook himself, given how it goes about the game design process is driven by how he has approached the construction of Angelina. While it may never change programmer, Cook hopes that in time the system will live on past his own involvement with it, not only just making games, but as a mentor to aspiring designers, be they human or AI systems. Hey folks, thanks for watching this latest case study here at AI in Games. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this video and want to keep up with my future content, to like and subscribe to this video, as well as follow AI in Games Twitter and on Facebook via the links in the description. A special thanks to Angelina's creator Mike Cook for answering some questions in preparation for this video. Be sure to follow him on Twitter to keep up with Angelina's development. In addition, Mike has recently launched his own YouTube series discussing procedural generation in games called Possibility Space, and I would encourage watching his opening video on the recent indie game launch of Heat Signature. You can also follow PROCJAM co-organiser Jupiter Hadley, and be sure to check out her YouTube channel. Jupiter releases more videos in 1 week than I often release in a month, and in which she plays pretty much every game jam video game created. It's pretty impressive. She also runs her own Patreon for that series. Check the links on screen now and they'll be in the description for you to check out. Speaking of Patreon, AI in Games is a crowd-funded show, and it's thanks to these good people on screen now who help this continue to be a reality. In return, Patreon backers get access to the AI in Games Discord server, early access to new content, a monthly newsletter, Patreon-exclusive videos, have access to my video topic list, Easter eggs, bloopers, can pitch new videos for me to make, and get to vote on the next video. As a special bonus for patrons, you can listen to Mike Cook and I discussing Angelina in preparation for this video, and hear some of his perspective and insight on what is a fascinating subject area. Head on over to the Patreon post linked to in the description to find out more. In the meantime, it's time to discuss the Patron Mega Vote, where I allowed my patrons to vote on a collection of exciting topics. The votes are in, and the next case study will be looking at Creative Assembly's Total War series. Be sure to keep an eye out for that, as well as the latest design dive video on Dark Souls in the coming weeks. In the meantime, don't forget there's a ton of design dives, tutorials, AI 101s, Let's Plays, and a bunch of other cool stuff here on AI in Games. I'm Tommy Thompson, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.